Okay, so to wait a couple more minutes, I'd just like to talk to you about something because, as everyone knows, hello, first of all, from the home office. We currently have a pandemic going on, a corona crisis, and for this we actually have developed a corona chatbot for the city of Würzburg and the IHK and also another organization here in the region that have basically integrated a corona chatbot on their website, answering frequently asked questions about the impact of the virus. So, for example, are shops still open? Can I go to the hairstyler? I need financial help. So this chatbot is basically answering all those questions immediately 24/7 and is therefore also basically relieving the crisis teams that are basically taking phone calls and emails on different channels and answering questions from the population. So I just wanted to promote that, and I think this is just a great example of what potential conversational AI and chatbots have. Later, I will maybe send a link into the chat so everyone can basically check it out and try it out because, as you know, chatbots and voice bots will improve once they will be trained. So I'm really happy for feedback whenever you try it out. So just a little information on that. So I think now is a great moment to start. So welcome again, everyone. Super happy that so many of you have joined. I'm sure a lot of you are in the home office as well as I am. My name is Michelle Skadowski. I am a co-founder and COO at BOTfriends, and my role is to actually lead most of our projects, chatbot and voicebot projects that we do with our clients. And today we will talk about how to really set up a successful chatbot concept. So from the idea, how you actually proceed to really have a great concept and how to really start a successful project. So in the beginning, I just like to talk more about chatbots in general, or the bigger idea of conversational AI. So conversational AI is going to be the new face of your brand in the future. So we believe that conversational AI is going to change how we communicate in the future. So these days, when we think about companies and brands like Apple, McDonald's, or IKEA, in case of McDonald's, we might associate this company with the golden M, with the big sign. And when we think about Apple, we probably think about the fruit apple. And when it comes to IKEA, maybe we think about the big blue building that we see on the weekend when we go there. However, we believe that in the future, we are going to associate brands and companies in a completely different way. And we believe it's going to be the virtual assistants that are representing the companies. So for example, we might already think about Siri when we think about Apple. But we also believe that when we think about McDonald's, maybe in the future, we will think about their virtual assistant who is taking our orders in the restaurants, but who is also answering our questions on websites and also maybe on messaging channels. And that's what we believe the future is going to look like, that we will have another force that is going to represent our brand and our company. And just to give you a little bit more information generally to what actually conversational AI is, because we usually talk more about chatbots and voice bots, but conversational AI basically automates in natural language at contact points using voice assistants and chatbots. So this is just the general term for various technologies like chatbots or voice bots. And the technologies are basically integrated into messaging platforms, but also voice assistants. And as I said, they can automatically answer questions with the help of machine learning. So there is no real human behind that anymore. To give you a little bit more insight about BOTfriends, the company, I'd just like to lose 5 more sentences to give you a better understanding how we actually came to developing that concept called the Chatbot Canvas. Now, we basically say that from the very beginning, our goal was to make conversational AI successful. So we founded 3 years ago in Würzburg, and from there, we basically developed individual chatbot and voicebot solutions with various clients. And just recently, a couple of months ago, we introduced our conversational middleware platform, BOTfriends. So what we do is basically we help companies from the very beginning until along the whole conversational journey to really start with workshops, design thinking, conversational design workshops, and to develop a concept. We help with system integrations, we deliver the platform, and also do consulting on the long term when it comes to operating those virtual assistants. So most of our clients have basically the same challenges. That's usually that they have a lot of requests coming in, and most of these requests are repeating. And since they don't have enough resources, it usually results in long response times, which is kind of difficult when we think about the increasing customer expectations. So I'd just like to give you 2 examples of projects that we've done with clients that just really show the great potential of conversational AI. The first one is from TUI Cruises. So cruise ships or cruises in general is a product, or is basically a product that you buy that involves a lot of consulting. So people really want to know how many restaurants are there on board, how long is the pool, do I have Wi-Fi on board, are there vegan restaurants, and all of those information are really hard to transfer over an interface like a website. So therefore, TUI Cruises now has a virtual assistant called Thies, der Steuermann, who's answering 24/7 all those frequently asked questions automatically. And basically, Thies is able to answer over 1,000 different topics or questions, which is crazy. But as I said, this just shows a great potential because the virtual assistant is able to really hold all this information in the background without showing it, but just releasing the information in the chat. Now, the chatbot processes over 55,000 interactions per month with an automation rate of 80%. And in this case, I just like to point out how important and crucial it was for the company to have a chatbot during this crisis of Corona. Because when this crisis started, a lot of tourists and customers were concerned and worried about if their journey or their holidays are still going to take place. So this company was receiving multiple thousand requests on that, and the team that is operating in managing the chatbot independently was able to really super fast and quickly provide the information within the chatbot. So all those people worrying about their holidays were having basically the answers within the chat, and this is just showing the great potential because you can deliver super crucial information in a very fast and efficient way without overloading the customer service team. A different example that I'd like to show that is a little bit different because it doesn't automate existing communication, but rather creates new communication ways. So Bosch has had the goal to establish a new relationship between customers and their heaters. So usually we associate heaters in a rather negative way. However, the goal was to bring it more into the positive, and that was by developing Tiara. Tiara is a virtual assistant that is running on Google Home or and also on Facebook Messenger that is able to manage your heaters at home. So just imagine sitting on your couch at home and saying, hey, Tiara, can you make it a little bit warmer here? It's still super cold in April. And then Tiara is going to communicate to your heaters and automatically switch them a little bit degrees higher. So this is just a great way of basically establishing a new communication to your heaters at home. So as I said, we did a lot of projects with those clients. These were just a couple of examples. However, what we've seen is that there are still a lot of challenges when it comes to those projects. So what we've seen is, for example, the project itself was successful. So the chatbot was running, it was kind of answering questions. However, there were still a lot of aspects that we haven't thought of from the very beginning, and that was kind of a challenge in the end. So first of all, that was basically the whole chatbot operation. So this is the time that starts after the chatbot goes live. So usually a lot of clients forget that actually we need to establish resources and processes after the chatbot goes live. So we need people who are responsible to train and optimize the chatbot after they go live, and usually a lot of people don't think about that. Also, what's missing a lot of times is the part with KPIs and analytics. So in a lot of projects, it was forgotten to really define what the main goals are of the chatbot and how to really measure it, and what's really an indicator of telling me if the virtual assistant has any impact on my company at all. And also involving the right stakeholders. So this is also closely connected to the part with chatbot operations, that the right people are really not at hand when they are needed, which are usually the experts that should put their knowledge into the virtual assistant and to operate it. And also a very classic point is data security. So this is something that is very often neglected. So usually a chatbot goes live, and then a lot of our clients are like, oh, we need to actually link a data processing agreement somewhere in this chatbot, or we need to include it on our website. And these are just questions that are also very often forgotten, but should be on the list from the very beginning to take care of. Now, to really avoid that and to have a clear picture of what is really needed when it comes to really conducting a chatbot project, we have developed a Chatbot Canvas that can be filled out from the very beginning before anything else is being started. So this is really the first step of creating a chatbot concept, and to really make sure that you think of everything and if it's even feasible to do that. So I think that we actually promoted this webinar to be more interactive. So I hope everyone had the chance to maybe print this out. So this is like this PDF is available on our website, and you can download it and print it out and basically fill it out for your own use case now in this webinar. So what we are going to do now is that I will guide you through this Chatbot Canvas by filling it out for a chatbot use case in human resources. So this is going to be an internal chatbot for a fictional company that would like to do chatbots, and I will guide you through this canvas by filling it out for a specific use case. And you at home have the chance to actually do that for your use case as well. You might think of a useful use case for your business unit, or you might think of something completely different in your free time. You might think of a chatbot, but it makes sense to make it for your company or for your business unit. So I think it will be more clear once we go into this. So I will start with basically 4 parts. So we have 4 parts in this Chatbot Canvas, which is like the chatbot value in the left upper corner, and then we have the communication part on the left below, and the technical infrastructure and stakeholders. So, but before the start, I would like to send out a poll to everyone just to basically have a better understanding how far everyone is when it comes to conversational AI. So our first poll that we're going to start is basically a question of how many of you have actually chatbots in your company? And I'm sure everyone will be interested as well to see how other people are doing on that. So just take a second and hand in your vote. Okay, I can see the first votes are coming in. Okay, so far I can see that most participants still have non-chatbot in their company, but there are still a couple that already have more than 10, but also some already conducted. Okay, that's great. So I will stop the poll now. Not everyone has participated, so I don't know if it's really representing, but I will hand out the results now, so if you're interested, you can look at them. Okay, and the second question is, of the people that are that have said that they are not that they haven't installed a chatbot yet. The basic question is how many of you are actually interested to start one? Okay, so a lot of you are interested. I guess that's also the case why you're here today. So yeah, that's a great time, because now it's really the perfect time if you haven't started yet to really work on your concepts. So yeah, this is great. I will stop this poll, and I think we should start now. Yeah, create your own Chatbot Canvas. This is going to be a more interactive part. I hope everyone is excited to do that. As I said, I will do it basically as an example and guide you through this Chatbot Canvas with a HR use case. So the first part of this Chatbot Canvas is basically to think about the value of the chatbot. And it's really important to define what the problem is that needs to be solved, and what goal are we trying to achieve. So in this case, in this use case that I like to look at is the work time regulation, because a lot of HR departments are struggling with very complex issues in regards to work time regulations. So it really takes a long time to answer those questions. And the goal should be to really simplify and speed up the handling of questions in regards to time corrections for employees, but also management and HR specialists. Okay, so this is the problem, that's the goal. It's all about work time management is super hard to understand. People have a lot of questions. It's a super complex process. And also when it comes to clocking my time, it's super complex in the intranet as well. Okay, then it should be to really scope the use case. So how far should this use case actually go? So in this use case, we divide it into two different parts. So first of all, we would like to have a process in this chatbot that is handling the time correction. So just imagine someone that, or just imagine a big enterprise or a company that has the clocking installation. So you need to clock in and clock out when you come, and someone forgot it because they needed to catch their bus, for example. And in this case, they usually had a very complex process in the intranet. You know, a lot of companies have a super complex intranet and don't find things super easily. And sometimes it's kind of confusing. So this chatbot should make it easier to clock your times afterwards in case you forgot it. So this should be a process. The chatbot should ask questions like, when did you forget it? What was the reason for it? And just collect the information. In this process, the chatbot should basically collect the information and send it instantly to an SAP system to enter the information. So this is just one part. The other part of the use case is obviously to also be able to hand out information on legal, operational, and collective bargaining topics in regards to time management. So this involves questions like, what is the maximum hours that I can work per day? How long should be the break of my staff? And what is still legally possible, what not? So there's just a lot of questions, especially for management, but also for employees. So the chatbot should be able to answer those work time management topics. So this is just the rough use case. This is basically still not enough to really plan out the whole chatbot. But in workshops, etc., we recommend to really look at the use case more in detail and to really see, okay, what is the scope of it? But this should just be the rough outline of the use case. Now, the added value for the user. In this case, it's quite obvious. So it's a fast and uncomplicated input of time correction. So I can use just Microsoft Teams, for example, and put in the time that I forgot to clock. And also I have immediate information output, and I don't have to wait on labor law experts to answer my questions. For the company, it's basically the output of truthful information very quickly and reliably, but also saving resources. So the employees in the HR team are actually able to take more time on very complex requests of employees, and therefore we have more satisfied employees in the HR team, but also in generally employees, because they are being taken care of by the virtual assistant instantly. Now, very important is analytics and KPIs. So how are you really planning on measuring the success of the chatbot? So in this case, it's really important to think about what analytics system are you going to use. So for example, in this case, you can integrate Chatbase. This is a third-party analytics system, but there are also plenty others on the market, or maybe you have a own solution that you would like to measure, but you definitely need one. And then there's the question of what KPIs are you going to measure. So when it comes to virtual assistant, this can be a whole new webinar in when it comes to analytics and KPIs. What kind of KPIs can I measure? And I'm currently thinking about also starting a webinar on this because it's a quite big topic and it's really important. But in this case, for example, you can measure, just to give you insights about the human handover rate. So how many users had to be directed to a real employee because the chatbot couldn't handle their request, or the sentiment score. So how happy are users and what kind of good mood are they in the chat? And in this case, it also makes sense to really track how many users are actually doing the time correction via the chatbot instead of the intranet, because this is really showing the impact of the virtual assistant or the chatbot. Now, these are just examples on how to really measure if on the long run you're actually fulfilling towards your goal or not, and what do you need to do to improve that. So this was the first part that is all about the chatbot value. Does it have a value? Is it solving problems? How am I going to measure its value? And now, as I said, this is going to be more interactive. I don't know if it's going to work out or not, but I hope that a lot of you have maybe printed out, or are you doing it maybe on the desktop? So you can now fill it out for your own use case. I'd say maybe we take a couple of minutes, maximum 5 minutes, so everyone can do that. In the meantime, you're also able to ask some questions in the chat. So I'm going to answer it right now. In the very end of the webinar, you're also able to, we can go into the discussion and also take questions via unmuting everyone. So this will be more interactive as well when it comes to questions. But so far you have the chance to use the chat. If you're done filling it out, I would ask you to raise your hand. So if you click on the chat or participants, you're able to basically raise your hand. And if you do that, I know that you're done and you would like to proceed in this webinar. So this is just something I'd like to try out if it works to do this interactive. Yeah, so I'll just give you a couple of minutes. You can ask questions in the chat, fill this canvas out for use case, and if you're done, you can raise your hand. Or if you would like to proceed, just raise your hand. Okay, so I have one question here that is about the cost of how much does it cost to actually develop a chatbot. So in this canvas, in the last part, we have a cost part on on how you calculate the cost for a chatbot. So we will give definitely an outline of how much it possibly can cost. So just definitely wait until the end. So in the last part of this chatbot canvas, we will talk about the costs of it. So then you will have a better picture of yeah, how much it can cost me. So this is going to be something that we're going to answer, definitely. Another question is if I'm going to share this video so we can view it later. Yeah, so as far as I believe, we're going to send out an email afterwards, after the webinar, that you're able to watch it again. So this should be definitely possible. Okay, so I think we are going to proceed now with the next part. Usually it should take a little bit longer to fill this out, I believe that, but I don't want everyone to be of those people who are already done to wait longer. The next part is all about communication. So we should really think about who is our target group of the virtual assistants. And in this case, it's basically the employees. So most of them are asking those questions and using the time correction for clocking, but also it's management who are responsible of their team, and they need to know about the legal situation on time management and time regulations, but also time officers, HR specialists, labor law experts, but also key user for time correction. Now, when it comes to the target group, we usually do also personas. We just recently developed a canvas for that, which I will show in a second, but this is just a rough outline of who's going to be the target group. Now, when it comes to virtual assistant, we also need to think about the other conversation part, which is not only the user of the virtual assistant, but also the virtual assistant itself. So as I already said in the very beginning, when you remember when I talked about conversational AI, it is going to be the new face of your brand representing your company. So therefore, it is really important to think about how the tonality of your chatbot or voice bot should be and how the personality should be. So it also makes sense to create a persona on this virtual assistant to really see how you communicate. Now, in this case, for the company, we say it's a very traditional company, so we would like the conversation generally to be more formal, but also generally according to official corporate communication guidelines, and we're not going to use any emojis. So these are just some examples. However, you can really think wider and more broad about this topic. Now, the marketing concept is also really depending on your use case. So do you really need to promote your virtual assistant when it comes to, if you already have live chat functionalities on your website and you are using or integrating chatbots in there, you might not promote it because people are already using this channel anyways. However, if you are establishing a new communication way, like, for example, a WhatsApp chatbot or a WhatsApp number that hasn't been there before or anything else, and you might think about a marketing concept on how to bring users to use that. Now, in this case, it's easier because it's generally about promoting it within the company because it's an HR internal chatbot use case. So you can include it in a intranet post, but also in the internal newsletter. You can basically put posters and billboards across the company. And what also makes sense is maybe to put some Easter egg functionalities in this chatbot. So for example, that users are able to ask what is the daily menu for vegans in the canteen. So this is like a functionality that is going to be used probably daily. And therefore you bring more employees or users to use your virtual assistant. But yeah, definitely think about your marketing concept. And last but not least, it's the data security part. So a lot of people include data processing agreements within their chatbot, and they are also pointing out that people are not supposed to put in any sensitive or personal data in there. So these are just information you need to think about and include it. Yeah, and in this case, maybe it's important to modify the data protection agreement in the intranet, but also must be coordinated with the IT. So this is just something to keep on your mind and to think about and not to forget it. Yeah, Again, we will put the interactive part. I will look at the questions in the chat, but just let me give you another preview of the persona canvas. So we don't only have a chatbot canvas, but just recently developed a persona canvas. So as I said, we should work on the target group, because this is just part of the design thinking process of really creating products that have a benefit and a value and really meet the user's needs. And for this, we have created a persona canvas, especially for the use of virtual assistant and chatbots. We are going to send it out in our April newsletter. So yeah, be patient on that. You will receive it soon. And I think it helps a lot of people when they want to develop a chatbot to really think about their user groups and to create a persona, which is a typical user for the chatbot. Now, again, you have a couple of minutes to maybe fill this out for your use case. If you're done, again, raise your hand. And if you have questions, please ask them in the chat now. So another question is if we can send the presentation separate as well. Maybe Mate can answer, my colleague Mate can answer that, because I think in the follow-up email we will include a link to the webinar to watch it again, but I don't know if we have a presentation link as well. I don't know if we can modify that or not. However, as always, you can, we'll share my contact details in the end. And you can, or maybe I'm just going to share my email in the chat right now. So if you would like to receive the presentation as a PDF file, you can just write me a message via email and I can send it to you. So this should be no problem. Okay, so I'm going to proceed now. If you need a little bit more time, just give me feedback in the chat. So if you don't like the speed of it, then just give me feedback on the chat, but I will proceed now because I don't have a right feeling of who of you is actually participating interactively with you. So just let me know. Anyway, so the third part is basically the technical structure. So as we now know what the target group of our chatbot is, we now have a better understanding of what our channels could be. So you definitely choose the channel or the platform depending on what kind of users you have and where these users are active. Now, in our case, we are going to include the chatbot on the intranet, but also Microsoft Teams, which is the internal messaging platform for this company. And when it comes to the conversation, this is something that is actually being developed more in detail in conversational design workshops to really map out the whole conversation. But this is just to, again, outline just roughly of how the use case is going to look like. So in chatbots and virtual assistants, we, as I said, usually divide between processes and intents, so just FAQs or topics that can be answered. So as I said, the process in this case is the time correction. So if I forgot to clock my time, I can basically tell the chatbot when that was, and it will hand the information to the SAP system. But for the first POC, proof of concept, we are going to create 30 intents, the frequently asked questions on legal, tariff, and operational issues. And also we need to think about the integration. So as I said, we want to include this process of time clocking. This requires an integration into the internal SAP system of the company to really deliver those information there and to really automate it. So this is kind of an RPA process as well in the background to some extent. But another part that is super important that is also neglected quite often is the handover part. So it's really important to think about what are you doing with users once the chatbot doesn't have an answer anymore, or maybe the virtual assistant didn't understand the request. So you really need to think about how you're handling users at that point to really ensure the user experience. So one part could be to really have a warm handover to really direct the user to a real employee instantly, which is like the nicest solution because the user doesn't have to switch channels. Or, I mean, an easier solution is basically to really refer to a phone number or an email. However, in this case, it's available on BOTfriends X, so there are conversational platforms out there like BOTfriends X that offer a human handover tool integrated, where users can basically see if employees can actually see if users are requesting a human handover and take over the conversation from there. So this is just a part that really needs to be thought of and what the solution might look in that case. Okay, so again, a couple of minutes of time until we do the last part. So this will be, so we're almost done soon. Just check on questions. Okay, so a question right now is, what are the best practices for external marketing of bots and voice apps? Since there are very few ad formats specific to bots and voice ads, for example, from Google. Best practices is hard to say because it really depends on the use case. And obviously, as it depends on the use case, it also depends on the target group. So depending on what kind of target group you have, it makes sense to think about the marketing you're using. Now, in this case, as I said, so it's really hard because from the very beginning, virtual assistants like chatbots and voice bots are suitable for everywhere where communication is going on, where I can automate communication. So generally, this kind of technology is very broad in their application. So it's hard to really say, okay, as a best practice, you can do this and that. So this is really something that needs to be looked at in detail, depending on the use case. And I'm afraid I really don't have like a straight best practice for this. Now, when it comes, for example, to establishing WhatsApp as a new communication channel for a company, it makes sense to include the number on the website for contact information, for example, or maybe to have ads on it. As I said, sometimes it's a nice way to include Easter eggs that kind of make the virtual assistant go viral. So if you have some functionalities that are super fun and that make people talk about it, so going over a more viral way of marketing makes sense, because then it just promotes the engagement of it. But when it really comes to the ad formats, if you want to do online campaigns, yeah, I don't know on this part, so I'm really sorry. So I don't have any best practices or advices on this. Okay, now let's do the last part, which is the part of stakeholders. So a really, really super important part. Now, when we think about conducting a project, we have some parties or stakeholders involved that we already know from other projects, which is technology projects, which is the product owner, for example. So in every kind of technology project, we have a product owner. And in this case, it makes sense to have that person as well. Now, this can be Sarah Schmidt, who is a project manager, for example. And you also need developers, especially when it comes to the SAP integration. So in this case, we said that for the time correction, for the clocking, we would like to integrate the SAP system from the company. So therefore, we need developers. So either you have an internal department of developers that can handle this, or maybe you have a solution provider or service provider like BOTfriends, for example, and or you just don't need developers at all because you're using some form of platform and you're not integrating any systems, but only doing FAQ chatbots, and you maybe also come out without developers. More importantly are actually the content managers. So these are the resources in this project that have all the knowledge and the expertise the chatbot should have. So in this case, it's Luisa Bauer, who is a labor law expert. So she knows everything when it comes to time regulation, time management of employees. And the challenge here is to, first of all, include her, to educate her about the technology of virtual assistants, because for her only job so far is probably to answer a lot of questions from employees in regards to labor law. However, she's not used to working with technologies or more technical projects. So maybe it's also her first time doing that. And therefore, it's super important to, first of all, include her, to educate her, and to really work with her intensively, to really do workshops with her, and to make her understand how this technology works, because she's going to be also responsible. This is really important to understand, because she is going to be responsible to operate this chatbot as well. Now, this is the part when we talk about the future, that a lot of job roles are going to change in the future, because artificial intelligence generally is able to take over a lot of jobs. And this is also in regards to conversational AI. Now, when artificial intelligence, conversational AI is able to automate 80% of communication, now is currently the part that a lot of people like Luisa Bauer have to be trained to actually work with these technologies, and to train these bots and make them better and bring all what they know into these technologies. Now, this is really important, and as I said, she will be responsible to operate it once it goes live. Now, and this really needs to be understood and to be communicated, and this is also an overall strategic approach to it, which needs to be aligned with management and etc. Now, we also, in some cases, need service agents. So as I said in the beginning, it's very possible that the chatbot doesn't know the answer to some questions. And therefore, we would like to ensure that the user is going to be taken care of by a real employee afterwards. So we need to assign resources, like, for example, Anna Deutz, she's a trainee in HR service, and also Lena Tauer, who is a time officer, to really take care of those people who are using the virtual assistant but couldn't get any help. Now, we need a decision maker, because someone needs to maybe hand out the budget and also sign off this whole project. And this can be, for example, Max Schubert, who is head of HR. So it really makes sense to have like a really good overview of who's going to be involved in your project, from whom do you need the help, and who needs to be involved. Now, the last part, it's the cost structure part. So this was a question that was also in the chat. So how much does it cost? This is a very important part, because for people like Max Schubert, head of HR, this is really important to understand how much is it going to cost me, and what kind of revenue savings do I actually earn from this chatbot. Now, in this case, just as an example, you might do a POC setup with a service provider that is going for 2 weeks or 3 weeks, which costs you 15,000 euros, which includes the training and the consulting and really the onboarding of the resources to set up the whole technology stack, etc. Really depends. And then, as I said, you might need as an integration, so you need to hire developers to do that. That might cost 20,000 euros. And depending on what technologies you use, you might have license fees. For example, BOTfriends X, it could be 15,000 euros per year, including support. So if you calculate all of that, that might be 50,000 the first year. However, in the second year, you only have the 15,000 euros for the license fee left. And this is how you can really calculate of how much are you actually also going to save when you know how much are you costs. So, you know, the next year it's going to cost me 15,000 euros. This is the fee that I'm paying for the technology I'm using. And how much do I pay, or how much do I actually save by saving resources who instead have taken care of the questions that were coming in. Now, this can be also done more in detail, but this is just a rough outline of the costs. Okay. So we're done now. So this was basically a whole guide through this Chatbot Canvas with an example. I hope it was clear to everyone. I hope everyone had the chance to be a little bit more active as well. So that was my hope, that we can do it a little bit more differently. Yeah, now let me see. Okay, we're almost done. I just like to promote one thing. So if you are interested in doing this in an individual session with one of me or my colleagues, we have personal one-on-one sessions, like a masterclass with the Chatbot Canvas that is for free. You can just send me an email and I will basically hit you up with one of our colleagues, and then you can ask more questions for your specific use case. If you say, hey, I would like to do a chatbot for, I don't know, my customer service, and I have questions for this and that, then you can also have a personal one-on-one session. So we can definitely do that. Now it's time for questions and answers. So yeah, let me see if there are still questions. Okay, so generally, as some people have asked about the presentation as a PDF, so we are able to include the presentation as a PDF in our follow-up mail, so you'll be able to receive it. So don't worry about this. And as I said, if you're interested in, in a personal one-on-one session, just send me an email, and then we can, basically offer you an appointment. Now, I have one more question. How do you see the Canvas approach for voice bots? This is actually a good question, because generally the Chatbot Canvas has resulted in a lot of projects that we've done, and I think 80% of our projects, or 70, were textual bots. So we've definitely done more projects with chatbots than voice bots. So definitely is more aligned with textual bots generally. But when I think about voice bots, it shouldn't be too much different. So when it comes to the value of the chatbot, we still need to define that for the voice bot. When it comes to the communication part, it's still the same. The only thing that's definitely different when it comes to voice bots is designing the conversation, so the conversational design. But this is a more detailed part that is basically also not done in this canvas, but afterwards in mapping the conversation. So I think you can definitely apply it for voice bots as well, when I think about it. Okay, let me just look at other questions. Okay, so another very interesting question is in regards to UX writing. So this, as we also call it, conversational copywriting. So the skills that are required writing those messages for the chatbot. So they're generally creating the content for the chatbot. So obviously people like, in our case, Luisa Bauer, who is a labor law expert, she probably doesn't know how to really put it in the right format. So there definitely needs to be education done. What we currently do is, as I said, we guide our clients through this conversational journey. So in the beginning, in the workshops, we give tips and advices when it comes to conversational copywriting. So, for example, there are specific rules that information you provide should only be relevant, should be truthful, should not be ambiguous in the right manner, etc. But also like a little bit tips, for example, the Jenga technique. So some of you know the game Jenga, which is like this tower, and you take out little sticks, and this is something like a technique you can do with when it comes to writing conversational text. So you take out words that are not needed. So we always tend to write out text longer and to put filling words in it and stop words that don't really provide any added value, so you can take them out and make the message shorter and more chat conform. So so we consult in the beginning to do that, but this is something that people that take care of the chatbot should be trained, and this is like a knowledge that needs to be built internally in the company, but we help with that in the very beginning. So yeah. So if none of you has any more questions, I really like to receive feedback. So is there anything that I can improve? Just let me know, write me an email or add me on LinkedIn. Feel free to do that. And I'm super happy to, to hear if everyone liked it or not. So maybe that's something, a poll that we should have included. I think we forgot it now, but it's okay. So we are going to do more webinars in the future. So stay tuned, and as I said, there are a lot of more topics that we can talk about and share with you. So right now I wish everyone to stay healthy, also your family, and that we will have a good time soon again. And I thank everyone for joining. So yeah, have a great day, and hopefully hear from each other soon. Bye.